Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I shall try not to be repetitive because most of the points have already been canvassed by Honourable Siratan, Honourable Tilak and Honourable Utim yesterday. But it is worth pointing out, Mr. Speaker, sir, as rightly elaborated yesterday by Honourable Utim, that the FSC on the 31st of May 2021 has invited local consultants to send proposals to review the Securities Act. So I take it that we shall soon be asked to debate on a new Securities Act before this House, and that the purpose of this amendment bill is thus solely with regard to the advent of Afrinex in our financial services landscape, as rightly pointed out by Honourable Tilak. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've been asked by many young graduates that this bill is quite technical in nature, the amendment being brought, and due to the fact that they have not gone through the debates when the Securities Act was debated in Parliament, I've been asked to briefly, concisely, and in a very clear manner explain what the purpose of this bill is all about and what are the amendments being brought doing for the financial sector in this island. So, in this line, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important that we go down memory lane to situate the efforts being made by legislators in the past, but also to place on record the politics of continuity that has helped in developing this investment component in our country. So I'll try to just go through chronology as to how we are now bringing amendments to the Securities Act. It all started way back in 1987, Mr. Speaker, sir, through the Act 11 of 1987. There was the setting up of the Stock Exchange, the Stock Exchange Commission, and the Chamber of Stockbrokers. The limitative list of securities then comprised of share, debenture, bond quoted on the stock exchange. And Mr. Speaker, sir, at that time, the stockbrokers were appointed by the minister to carry out the business of dealing in securities quoted on the stock exchange. Brokers who were appointed under the Brokers Act could elect to be exempted by the Act. Then in 1988, as rightly pointed out by the Honourable Minister, the new Stock Exchange Act came into operation, thus repealing the Act 11 of 1987. In 1996, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Securities Central Depository Clearing and Settlement Act 1996 has made provision for the establishment and regulation of a central depository clearing and settlement service in order to facilitate dealings in securities. And Mr. Speaker, sir, thereafter, Mauritius has experienced a real boost in securities legislations. Drafting was done and prepared in 2004. There was the Securities Act of 2005 that was enacted, and in year 2007, more precisely, on the 28th of September 2007, it was proclaimed and became operational. The Securities Act in force, Mr. Speaker, sir, has indeed established a framework for the regulation of securities markets, depository, clearing and settlement facilities, securities exchanges, and intermediaries, and provides for self-regulatory organizations and regulates the offering and trading of securities and other related matters. Its coming into operation as a one-stop shop has done away with various legislations, Mr. Speaker, sir, scattered in several enactments. So I will not go into all those acts because all have been repealed, and we've got our Financial Services Act, then we've got our Securities Act, but I would go on what this amendment is all about, the advent of Afrinex. The regulator, the Financial Services Commission, recently introduced a review of the regulatory regime through various rules that have already been prepared and already operational. Significant changes were made to its licensing rules for market intermediaries dealings in derivatives. The changes were made in the context of operations of Afrinex Limited, which will be a new securities exchange in Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, sir, as it stands, the amendments being brought cater basically for accommodating Afrinex Limited in our jurisdiction. In line with the bill, amendments to the Securities Licensing Rules 2007 to cater for a new category of investment dealers, namely the investment dealer derivatives, which replaces the former three categories of investment dealer, commodity derivative segment, investment dealer currency derivative segment, and investment dealer equity segment were already in place. To put it in the context, Mr. Speaker, sir, as rightly pointed out by Honorable Tilak, in November 2018, the FSC licensed Afrinex and its subsidiary, Afrinex Clearing House Limited, a clearing and settlement facility in Mauritius. A memorandum of understanding between Afrinex and Bombay Stock Exchange Limited was signed in March 2018 to develop this new securities exchange in Mauritius. As by information being circulated, Mr. Speaker, sir, we now know that Afrinex intends to list a variety of securities from the National Stock Exchange of India Limited and the Bombay Stock Exchange, and this will benefit from the support of the Bombay Stock Exchange, which will provide the technology, the training, the market data sharing, and surveillance. These developments are in line, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the ongoing policy and objective of our country as a niche jurisdiction to develop and internationalize capital markets in Mauritius, to diversify the range of listed financial products available in this market, and thereby further enhance its role as a regional financial hub. Mr. Speaker, sir, however, I pose here to raise a note of caution. With this novel venture, strict adherence to the provisions of the Securities Act is of paramount importance for the perennity of this activity. Here I shall refer to Section 17 and Section 18 of the Securities Act, respectively, which read as follows. Obligations of Securities Exchange, Mr. Speaker, sir. Securities Exchange shall perform its function so as to ensure fairness, efficiency, and transparency of transactions effected through the Securities Exchange, and publish daily and periodic information and averages on its activities in order to ensure transparency and equity to investors. Securities Exchange shall also submit to the Commission, that is the FSC, information at such intervals as the Commission may request. And they also, under the legal obligation, to submit to the Commission their trading logs at such times for such period as it may require. And there is an important section in the Securities Act that should be adhered to also, Mr. Speaker. So is Section 18, relating to directors of securities exchanges. The directors of a securities exchange shall ensure that at all times, at least 1/3 of the number of directors are independent of the management of the securities exchange. And the directors include, in their number, directors who have experience in the operations of such securities exchange. And it is the duty for the director to act in the best interest of investors where there is a conflict between the interest of the investors and the interest of the securities exchange. The director shall give priority to the interests of the investors. And Section 19 of this same Act, Mr. Speaker, sir, the director of a clearing and settlement facility shall, in acting as such a director, have a proper regard to safeguarding the interest of users of the facility and the public interest. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is now public knowledge when you peruse the website of Afrinex to get to know that one of its directors is the chairman of SBM Holdings Limited, which is listed on the Stock Exchange of Mauritius, and that he is also one of the administrators appointed for Air Mauritius Limited, which is also listed on the Stock Exchange of Mauritius. There are pertinent questions to be asked, Mr. Speaker, sir. Can this gentleman wear 3 hats? Has there been a proper due diligence exercise done by the FSC to see to it that there is no conflict of interest in the position being occupied? Because when you apply to become a director, for example, in an entity which is licensed by the Bank of Mauritius, there is a questionnaire of fit and proper person. And when you go through those questionnaires, even if you are somebody of very high caliber or great credentials, you cannot sit on several bodies, institutions, and companies that are licensed by the Bank of Mauritius. So I would invite the Honourable Minister to look at this particular aspect so that there are no perception of conflict of interest when this very component is being canvassed and asked investors, especially retail investors, to invest in this domain. That is why, Mr. Speaker, sir, the notion of proper accountability, fairness, good governance, but also a perception of good governance should prevail to avoid position and perception of conflict of interest. There should be strict guidelines as to who can be eligible to sit as directors, and I am of the humble view that politically exposed persons, political nominees, should satisfy those guidelines to be put in place by the FSC. Mr. Speaker, sir, reputation and good governance practices should be the key words to drive this venture. The more so, Mr. Speaker, sir, with such types of activities, market manipulations, insider tradings, are real risks that can jeopardize the whole structure being put in place. FSC should also be at the forefront, Mr. Speaker, sir, to protect retail investors where the facts demonstrate abusive or manipulative trading activity that is prohibited by the security rules, regulations, and the Act. Likewise, foreign issuers, Mr. Speaker, sir, must ensure compliance with our laws for any contemplated offers or sales of their own securities. FSC should also step in to facilitate a robust public dialogue among market participants and investors on the structure and operation of our securities markets. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, to drive this venture, we need independent, resilient, and proactive institutions. And I know the Financial Services Commission is doing a good job with professionals around so that there is a conducive environment for investors to use these platforms. But more personnel and more facilities should be given to the Financial Services Commission, because this particular component is a very technical component, so that the enforcement division at the Financial Services Commission should comprise of technical people and also experts, even if we should bring foreign experts in this field. A few words on the Stock Exchange of Mauritius, Mr. Speaker, sir. As it is, the Stock Exchange of Mauritius will now compete with Afrinex. But it is being forecasted that this will complement each other. That is, Afrinex will specialize in listing of securities, derivatives, and commodities, and I just hope this is the case. And it goes in line with the policy of internationalization of the SEM, which has been going on since 2013. And we have now moved on to a new stage of development, and I just hope that SEM shall continue also to give due importance to its regulatory functions. Very important, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we are embarking on such activities, that the regulatory functions of SEM is put into perspective. And Section 23 of the Securities Act, Mr. Speaker, sir, gives the SEM regulatory functions to ensure that there is adequate supervision on the market operations and conduct of market participants. And they are also empowered to ensure adequacy and efficiency of internal controls, and also investigate misconduct or apparent misconduct by market participants and their representatives that could seriously affect investors and other participating organizations. They are also asked upon to investigate possible market abuses, including insider dealing and fraudulent behavior, and take disciplinary measures or agree to a settlement after a public hearing. So I would also urge the Honourable Minister that this aspect of the law should be consolidated with further regulations or rules by the FSC in the Financial Services Act and in the Securities Act to give maybe additional powers to the Stock Exchange of Mauritius in its regulatory operations. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've got a matter of concern with regards to people and business entities that are continuing to invest in the Stock Exchange of Mauritius, but they have lowered their weights and growth prospects are vanishing, and illiquidity has become a major problem, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is, assets which cannot be exchanged for cash easily. This might be because there are not enough investors willing to buy them. In business terms, Mr. Speaker, sir, illiquid companies without enough cash to cover their financial obligations may struggle to continue trading. Even a company with plenty of assets, such as land, property, or machinery, may face the prospect of insolvency if these cannot be converted into cash quickly. A vivid example, Mr. Speaker, sir, is Air Mauritius Limited. I'm also very concerned, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the depreciation of our Mauritian rupee. This is seriously impacting on the transaction of the SEM. There has been a massive disinvestment of some 1.5 billion rupees with sales from foreign investors, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is as per the figures and tables found in the Bank of Mauritius monthly statistical bulletin. Thus, foreign investors' net sales on the SEM over a one-year period from May 2020 to May 2021 is around 1.5 billion rupees. Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, true it is that this may be linked to COVID-19 pandemic, but the more so because of the trend of depreciation and devaluation of our rupee, and investors would be losing in terms of currency effect, even if they might win in terms of capital gains, but the net effect could be a loss when taking currency into account, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is worrying for the Stock Exchange of Mauritius, Mr. Speaker, sir. We need a stable rupee to make our jurisdiction attractive for investment. In a nutshell, Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill brings more exchanges, more clearing houses, more financial products, potentially more brokers, and more sophisticated products to be offered now to retail investors who may not properly assess the risk factor with regard to their investment, should also provide and cater for a check and balance in the bill. This is also very important because we are introducing this concept of retail investors. I am humbly requesting the Honourable Minister, maybe through regulations or further detailed rules from the FSC, that this aspect be looked into as well. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a law practitioner, I join many professionals working in the financial sector to hopefully wish to see the silver lining in the coming years in this sector, with proper laws and regulation in its place, proper monitoring and applying the principle of accountability, transparency and fairness to ensure continuity in this sector, so that the young professionals of this country, Mr. Speaker, sir, will have better and future job opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.